Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps my channel out a lot. I also love it when people leave comments, so let me know what you think. So we're not sure what to call this kind of setting, but my wife has a piece of costume jewelry. It's a ring with a green piece of glass that's faceted and emerald cut in it. And it's got an unusual prong setting like I've never seen before. She's had it for years, and so I thought I'd try to duplicate it. I'm not quite sure how to describe this setting. It's got side prongs rather than corner prongs. I'm going to be using a large, long oval amethyst to try and duplicate the similar kind of setting. We'll see how it turns out. It'll be an interesting experiment. I think it'll be fun. Before we get started, I wanted to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters. I really appreciate not only their financial support, but the great environment that they've created over there. It's full of interesting people with lots of knowledge who are sharing it with each other, so I really like that. So thanks for that. The other group is my YouTube subscribers. We're about to pass 11,500, which I have trouble believing when I think about it, because only a couple of years ago I was just starting out, and I really appreciate all of the love and support I get from you guys. Thanks not only for the nice comments, but for the contributions like the Buy Me a Coffee and the Super Thanks. Those things really help with my raw material costs. So, all right, well, let's get started on this project. This is one of my design idea books that you can get on my merch store if you're interested. There's a bunch of cover designs, but all right. I have found in recent times that it helps me out a lot if I sketch out a design in advance, and so I did for this one, and it's basically I'm copying one that, like I said, was a costume jewelry piece my wife had. So we'll see how this works out, but the prongs come up like this, but they don't really have a platform for the stone to sit on. They just kind of grasp it right at the top here, these prongs. So this is the basic overall shape, and it'll work for an oval stone too. And I picked out, actually did a kind of a prototype to get an idea how big I needed to make this. But I have this pretty amethyst. It's a 10 by 20, and it's a real deep setting, or a really deep stone. So I think this will be a good setting for it. My only concern is that it might be a little bit flimsy, so I'm going to work harden it really well before I set it to make sure it's really stiff and strong. And then I'm just going to hook it to a real basic kind of split band that goes like just like that, and we'll bring it around and we'll attach it here and here. So it'll be here, 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 and here. This is a sketch of a slightly smaller version because I actually bent this around the stone to see how close I was size-wise. I'm sure I could have done some sort of mathematical calculation to get that, but sometimes trial and error gets you a better result, at least for me, since I'm not a former math teacher, I'm a former English teacher. So I made it slightly shorter in this drawing, and I'll use that to guide my proportions. The wire that I did, it started out as 14 gauge square, but I wanted it to be thinner, so I pulled it down to 16 through a draw plate, and then I actually pulled it one more pull through the next hole, so I'm not sure what gauge it is. It's a little bit smaller than 16 gauge. And then I flattened it slightly in my rolling mill to where it's about 0.04 inches, or just a little over a millimeter thick. So it's a little bit wider than it is thick now. And I wanted it so it would have some strength this way, but be a little bit bendable this way. So do that. The last thing we'll do once we have it all mounted and everything is I'll probably cut a little bit of a notch right at the top of each of these. And like I said, I'll work harden it after I polish it. I'll bend it back and forth quite a bit until it's really stiff and springy. And then we'll set the stone. So I think we'll start off by making this piece just a little bit smaller. So here's that wire that I rolled through the rolling mill. So like I said, it's a little bit flatter this way than it is this way. So I think we'll start by cutting 4 of these things, and we'll make a little notch and then bend them inwards. Let's cut this end off here. decide on a size. I just need to make it bigger than it needs to be, so then I can cut it down to the correct size. Where did my little ruler go? 14 millimeters. So do 2 at about 28. For these side pieces, they're about 10, so let's just go 20. Kind of looks like a medieval plus sign. Should we call that in the title? Should we call the setting a medieval plus sign setting? Where is my file? I'm a little clumsy today, I've noticed. So chances are I'll fling these all off the table and lose them. Hopefully not. I'm just finding the center of these. Now I'm going to file a notch on the side, the narrow side here, so that it goes almost all the way through so I can make a sharp bend and solder it closed. So this is probably going to be a project for someone who has some soldering experience. I wouldn't start off with something like this. If you need to, you can brace this against something. I have a tendency to just do it under the camera this way so you can see what I'm doing. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use primarily hard silver sheet solder, and I use a liquid flux. And sometimes I spray it on with a spray bottle. Sometimes I dribble it with this, ever since Flying Chef, one of my YouTube followers, sent this to me. It's become quite a dribbler lately. I'm not sure if that's something one should brag about. These new honeycomb pads from Pepe Tools, I really kind of like them. So with these, I've got that notch there. I'm going to go ahead and bend it sideways. I'm going to try and kind of hold it in the pliers like that so that I can bend it inwards a little bit more sharply. It'll be interesting to see how this turns out. If you haven't heard already, I finished my 2023 sketchbook compilation. It's basically an ebook you can download that has all of there's a page for each of the videos I did during 2023, along with a list of the materials you need, the difficulty level, a picture of the sketch I made, a picture of the final piece, and a link to the video. So I just thought it would be kind of useful for people to have at hand where they can have it as a reference to just, they want to come up with a project. You could peruse those and just click right to the video and have a list of materials handy if you want to do something different. You can also, if you'd rather, you can join my Patreon at the second tier or above and get it for free. So have some little solder that I cut earlier here, little tiny pieces. Not very big. And I do what's called pick soldering, which is where I use a soldering pick to melt a little piece of solder on the end of this. This is a new pick from Pepe Tools too. Right there, heat the piece up to soldering temperature and touch it there. If you're interested, I have a video about it that'll kind of explain how it all works. It's a super handy thing to know how to do. It really makes things go a lot faster. It allows you to pretty precisely place a bit of solder in exactly the amount you want. So it gives you that much more control, which I like. See, it just kind of jumps on there. That's a video worth watching. Took a lot of things that used to take me an hour or two to do and turned it into a 10-minute job, you know. Just makes things a lot quicker. And now I just need to do a bit of shaping. I want to get these consistent and then cut them off to exactly the same length. So I think sometimes it's helpful if you're trying to bend something sharply but you don't want it to twist on you. If you hold it in the flat nose pliers like this, and then you can bend it a little bit more easily. Things have a tendency, when you're trying to bend them against the easy way to bend them, they have a tendency to try to find an easier way to bend, which is usually to twist. So square wire is bad about that. Flattened square wire is also bad about that. And kind of set one on top of the other one in order to compare them. Pretty good idea that I got that pretty close just by eyeballing it. Wonders never cease. So I'm going to leave those long right at this point. Those are going to overlap like that. So we'll cut them shorter, but let's shape these other ones as well. That's pretty close. Maybe I'm having a better day than I thought. Alright, so let's figure out where I want to cut this one off. I think for now I'm going to leave it a little bit long, just so they don't bump into each other. That way there's enough room for me to solder these pieces to the sides of those, but let's use this first one as a guide to cut the second one. Oh, I wrote down the measurements. So this was about 25 millimeters. This other one was a little bit longer than that. This one was about 21 or 22 millimeters width-wise, so height 25, and then 21 or 22. So we'll put these like this. You gotta compensate. It's gonna curve upwards like this a little bit, so I think that should be fine. So I'm gonna make a mark right. In theory, right about there. I think that's pretty good. Let's go with that length. We'll use this as a guide to cut this other one off too. That looks pretty good to me. Let's give that a shot. I'm going to cut myself a little bit more solder. Solder, if you're across the Atlantic. If you're new to soldering, it's always important to make sure all the pieces reach the soldering flow temperature. I'm using hard silver sheet solder, so it melts at about 1450 degrees. So I want to get all the pieces up to that temperature in order for it to work well. It's a little bit cockeyed, a tiny bit. Not enough to be an issue, so I think I'm going to take my jeweler's saw and cut off the inside little bump there so it's easier to do. So I'll be right back. I'm just filing the tops of all of these flat a little bit. You can see I cut off the excess on the inside. So you can kind of compare the size here. A little bit shorter. So let's kind of use a dapping punch here in my plastic hammer, and let's kind of shape this a little bit. Now I think the sides are going to have to come up much steeper since it's narrower. So I'm going to actually just manually move those up a little bit. I'm trying to bend the wires not where they join so much. By using leverage, kind of controlling where the bend happens. So I think we're pretty good as far as height and everything. If I look at it from the side like this, I get it to stay in there. Everything's going right to where there's a little bit projecting above the girdle of the stone, which is the widest point where the crown and the pavilion come together. And yeah, it looks like we got it just about right. So mostly my next stage, I'm pretty much not going to do much with this except for mount it to the band now, but we need to make a band. So I think I'm going to use 14 gauge square wire and flatten it out on the rolling mill just a little bit. So let's do that. This is my beautiful new rolling mill. It's a 130 millimeter combo. Combo meaning it can do reducing wire through this or just use the flat part for texturing or whatever. So that's a little bit thinner in one dimension, so we use that for the band. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to re-soften this metal. I just rolled it through the rolling mill, which is going to work harden it and make it pretty stiff and hard to bend. So let's heat this up to the point where it's just kind of a light reddish color, and then let it cool off. And that'll take that work hardening right out of it. We're going to be bending it against the way it wants to bend, and so that'll make it a little bit easier. While that's cooling off, I took a smaller piece of wire and I wrapped it around the size 8. Sorry, I arbitrarily decided on a size 8. So from there to there is about right. So I can use that as a guide to cut my two pieces that I'm going to use. That'll give us a pretty close measurement, hopefully. Keep in mind, though, that there's a little gap in the middle here. So since this went all the way around, this should give me pretty close the size I'm looking for, I hope. Let's find the center of that. Now, we're actually going to bend these first, slightly this way. Don't need to be really steeply done, just a little bit. Try and do them pretty close to the same angle if I can. That looks pretty decent, so let's see if we can't get that soldered. So these are going to be joining right on here, so I want them to be about the same width as those. So I'm going to squeeze it together just slightly. This one's really going to try and twist, so we're going to have to manually do a lot of it probably. I wonder if that's the way I should go. I could solder it to where they kind of squeezed right between those things. That might work really well. I think I've got that relatively straight. Maybe we should call this a tulip setting. It kind of looks like a tulip to me. So the trick is going to be to get this soldered in symmetrically. So this surface is called a magnesia block. It's a softer soldering pad, and so you can push things into it, which sometimes is handy. That looks pretty good. Let's try that. Well, let's see what happened. The biggest question is, did I get it on there straight? Which is usually, the answer is usually no. That's not bad though, I think. So I'm going to get that cleaned up with a saw again like I did, and I'll pickle this, and then we'll do some grooves at the top, and we'll set this stone. So be back in a bit. Okay, so I've got the things all bent up to the correct height. I use the Dremel to kind of cut a notch about where the girdle of the stone falls, which is kind of right along here. And see, I haven't really set it yet, but once I have it in place, then I'm going to pull these down a little bit. All right, so with the exception of some fine tuning on tightening that up and everything, I think that's in there okay. That was kind of a difficult set, and I'm not 100% happy with it at this point. So I will continue to work on that so it's a little bit tighter, and then we'll call it good. But I'll take some better pictures and put them at the end. All right, we're not quite sure what to call this one yet, but we'll come up with a name for it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button before you leave, and leave a comment. I love to hear what you think. The other thing is, I have quite a bit of content uploaded now, so if you're interested, take a look at some of my other videos. I have over 300 tutorials uploaded now, and I think there's some valuable content, and I'm sure you can find something that you'll like. So check those out. Make sure to subscribe and hit the button to allow for notifications so you know when I put out a new video, which is typically on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So Don't forget to hit the video description down below. There's some important links down there. I'm now a Pepe Tools affiliate, so if you click that link and buy something, it helps me and it helps Pepe Tools. So they have a lot of great tools over there. Check it out. There's a link to my safety video. Safety is important when you're doing this, so check that out as well. And then there's a number of links that are ways to support the channel. You can download my new book off of my merch store. If you go to the merch store link, there's a link to my Buy Me a Coffee site if you want to help out with some material costs. And there's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out how to become a part of that group over there and some of the benefits you get. So thanks for watching this video. Take care. Happy silversmithing.